On February 28, 2026, the U.S. military launched Operation Epic Fury. Waves of stealth bombers and fighter jets poured into Iranian airspace. Within days, U.S. Central Command reported overwhelming results. They struck over 9,000 targets, dismantled command centers, and crippled over 140 Iranian Navy vessels. By conventional metrics, it was a flawless execution of overwhelming force. Yet beneath this massive display of firepower, the military is trapped. The strikes are succeeding exactly as planned, but the underlying arithmetic of the conflict is bleeding the United States dry. Washington is fighting a 20th-century kinetic war, measuring success in explosions and flattened buildings. Their adversary is fighting a 21st-century war of mathematical attrition, designed entirely around the balance sheet. Years before the first bomber took off, a professor teaching in Beijing named Jiang Xueqin modeled exactly how this trap would unfold. Jiang began his career deep inside the Western establishment, graduating with a degree in English literature from Yale College in 1999. He moved into journalism, but his trajectory abruptly halted in 2002. While filming an undercover documentary on labor unrest in Dorking, Chinese state security arrested him, held him incommunicado, and deported him. Shut out of his original career, Jiang turned to public education and developed a framework he calls Predictive History. Instead of analyzing conflicts through the lens of ideology or moral narratives, his model relies strictly on historical patterns in game theory to calculate how nations pursue their own self-interest. This forced status as a geopolitical outsider made Jiang immune to the institutional assumptions of Washington, allowing him to identify a structural vulnerability that internal metrics couldn't track. We can now test Jiang's May 2024 lecture directly against the raw telemetry published by U.S. Central Command in March 2026. Jiang argued that if the United States launched a major offensive in the Middle East, they would easily hit their targets, but in doing so, they would trigger a deliberate, inescapable cycle of escalation. The CENTCOM data confirms the tactical success. Beginning precisely on February 28th, American B-2 stealth bombers and F-35s obliterated over 9,000 distinct regime targets in a matter of weeks. This is where the models diverge. Central Command looks at flattened infrastructure and logs of victory. Jiang's model categorizes those same destroyed buildings as bait. It's a concept known as the escalation trap. By forcing the United States to commit forces to protect its initial gains, every tactical victory simply locks the military deeper into a regional conflict that cannot be won with airstrikes. The true outcome of this war is dictated by the sustainability formula, a simple ratio comparing the financial cost of attacking against the cost of defending. To shield its bases and allies, the United States relies on advanced air defense networks like the Patriot and SM-3 systems. A single interceptor missile from these batteries carries a multi-million-dollar price tag. The incoming threat consists primarily of the Shaheed series, decentralized mass-produced loitering munitions that can be built for as little as $20,000 apiece. This ledger visualizes the exact cost of a swarm attack. If the attackers launch 100 drones, they risk just $2 million. If the U.S. successfully intercepts every single one, it burns millions of dollars to achieve a zero-sum result. But the real vulnerability is inventory. A concentrated saturation strike can force the military to burn 25% of its global reserve in one night. This strategy executes an industrial-scale bank run on air defense systems, depleting a supertower's limited inventory through constant, low-cost harassment. The ripple effects of this math extends far beyond military stockpiles. The sustained conflict has effectively closed the Strait of Hormuz to commercial shipping. With the strait blocked, access to the Middle East's energy reserves is cut off, triggering a catastrophic spike in global crude oil prices. Jiang's ultimate thesis is that the entire American-led global order, the knowledge economy, advanced manufacturing, and complex supply chains, only functions if energy remains cheap and abundant. As energy costs climb, the profit margins for globalized manufacturing evaporate. This forces a shift away from global interdependence toward localized self-sufficiency, a process of deindustrialization where former trade partners become regional rivals. An empire built on frictionless global trade and complex financial instruments cannot survive in a world where physical resources are walled off. The math simply no longer supports the structure. As the ledger bleeds, the global economy slows down, and the lights of the 20th century order slowly flicker off.